Why you wouldn't last a day as a real shinobi. Forget the black pajamas. Real shinobi survived boredom, filth, and fear. You probably wouldn't last a single night, let alone a day. The truth is uglier, slower, and much more effective. Tonight we're cracking 6 myths: costume, weapons, assassinations, poison, training, social status, using the Bansen Shukai, the Shoninki, Antony Cummins translations and commentary, and John Mann's research. You'll learn what they wore, carried, ate, and how they waited without going mad. If you enjoy this kind of reality check, take a second to subscribe and tell me where you're listening from. Now dim the lights, breathe easy, and let's start with what a shinobi actually was. Let's be clear, ninja sells tickets. Shinobi did work. The manuals, Shoninki and Bansen Shukai, frame the role as espionage first, infiltration second, survival always. Not sword-swinging duels on rooftops. The job is stealing information, slipping messages, sabotaging logistics, and getting out with your skin and your story intact. Why does this matter? Because once you view the shinobi as a spy, every tool and tactic suddenly makes sense. Clothes aren't costumes, they're passports. Knives aren't for glory, they're for rope, knots, and doors. Fire isn't drama, it's panic engineered on a schedule. The thing most people miss is the spy frame. The mission is influence, not spectacle. Scope of work? Information theft, maps, grain counts, gate timings, a steward's drinking habit. Sabotage, a damp fuse in the wrong place, a ladder rung shaved half through, lamp oil moved just close enough to a paper screen to throw a shadow of risk. Escape. Half the manual is about how not to be where blame lands. Killing? Last resort. A corpse shouts. A malfunction whispers. Networks are the unsexy core. No lone wolf heroics. You're a node in a web of handlers, informants, and safe houses. The ferryman who asks nothing and remembers everything. The shrine keeper who hears confessions and repeats none. The charcoal burner who knows which footpath is mud even when the sky is clear. You lean on them and they lean on your discretion because if you talk, they burn. Time horizon? Weeks of prep, hours of waiting, seconds of movement. You'll spend a month building a cover and a night memorizing the sound of a particular gate's hinge. Then you'll slip a single paper slip into your sleeve in 5 heartbeats and disappear into the market like you never existed. Most of the work is negative space. What you don't do, what you don't say, where you don't stand. Stakes are not cinematic. They're bureaucratic and brutal. Exposure can mean torture, public display, confessions extracted until your mind invents names to stop the pain. Worse, collective punishment. Your patrons are not sentimental. Plausible deniability is a feature, not a bug. And if cutting you loose keeps a lord clean, congratulations. You just became a rumor with feet. Now, how do the manuals actually steer behavior? Bansen Shukai reads like a toolkit. Entry, exit, fires, powders, timing. The Shoninki drills the human side. Observation, counter-observation, lying without leaving fingerprints. Cummins' work opens the language and details, while John Mann gives you the long timeline. The ninja as a shifting role across centuries, peaking in the Sengoku chaos when information bought survival. Together they say, disguise more than darkness, patience more than prowess, method over myth. Think of movement like breath. Inhale when the corridor's empty. Exhale when the floor creaks, so the sound rides the breath and dies. You're not a fighter picking the right stance. You're a trespasser managing physiology, pulse control, sweat under layers without smelling like adrenaline. Mouth closed to reduce the hiss. Body as muffled instrument, not weapon. The lone wolf fantasy fails because the city's alive. You need people who can vouch for you without knowing you. The basket seller who recognizes your face as that herb guy, not as stranger. The stable boy who takes a coin and forgets your horse. Compartmentalization by necessity. Nobody holds the whole plan, including you, so the chain can't snap at one link. And here's where it gets practical. Every mission starts with 3 questions. What am I here to learn? Where can I wait without being seen? How do I leave if the pattern breaks? If you can't answer all three, you don't go. That's not cowardice, that's math. Because patterns break. A guard's cousin dies and suddenly the schedule moves. Rain adds noise, but also slick tiles. A festival creates cover, but also more eyes. You probably want the glamorous part. The knife, the flip, the whisper behind the screen. Sorry, the skill that separates beginners from pros is boredom management. Observation cycles, smell first, oil, sake, smoke, then sound, wood strain, sandals, armor cords, then light, lantern angle, moon shadow, door sliver, then touch, the beam grit on your palms, then the gut, pattern feel, loop it every few minutes. It's a mantra with senses. Once you nail that mindset, everything else clicks. Disguises aren't cosplay. They're embroidery on the pattern you just mapped. Tools aren't gadgets. They're answers to doors and floors you already measured. Fire, poison, rumor. They're levers you pull only when the structure you saw will carry the weight. And if it won't, you don't pull. You walk away quietly, still anonymous. So before you get comfortable, remember, Shinobi means endurance in plain sight. You blend, you wait, you leave. The myth is a duel. The reality is a ledger with one name erased so cleanly, no one remembers it was there. And yes, we're going to crawl into the beams, the market, and the latrine together, because that's where the job actually happens. You fit your ribs between two old rafters and pretend your lungs don't exist. Dust sits on your tongue like sour flour. Every swallow feels like it'll echo. Your calves hum with that slow electric ache that means the blood's losing interest in your lower half. You don't move. Movement is dead. You can't afford it. The wood talks. Old timber always does. Tiny sighs. A dry tick when the night air cools. Beneath you, a room breathes in rhythms you're already logging. One servant coughs every 100 heartbeats. One lantern pops on a lean-to schedule. Two soft snaps, then quiet. You count without numbers because numbers are loud in your head. You use breath math. 4 slow in, hold when the beam settles, 6 out. The creak rides the exhale and dies with it. That's the trick. Your nose runs, it wants a wipe. You let it drip into the scarf you tucked under your lip. It's rough hemp, lye stung, sour with your own sweat from earlier. Glamour. The good news is, that itch on your ankle you can't scratch. It's not a spider. The bad news is, it's your mind, and it won't shut up. You give it a job, map by sound. Paper screens whisper when someone passes. Sandals scrape straw. Armor cords click like tiny teeth. The kitchen is left, oil smell. The guard's sake breath is right. Sharp, sweet, a little rotten. You move exactly once, not a shift. A pour. Weight bleeds from heel to toe to beam. It's not athletic. It's pathetic in the best way. Your toes numb out, then your hands campaign for their own misery. You tell them no. Fingers hold splinters like prayer beads. Count 3 rough spots, pause 3 more. Mantra beats panic. A moth dings the lantern. That noise is a gift. You take a sip of air while it covers you. This is segmented sleep's cruel joke. Your body wants the old pattern. Sleep, wake, sleep. But discovery ends all patterns. You don't close your eyes, you practice eye rest. Let the lids dip a hair, stare soft at the beam grain until it blurs, then sharpen when the lantern hisses again. 10 seconds of softness buys you 10 more minutes of stillness. That's the economy. Footsteps, 2 men. One heavy, one trying to be. The heavy one's right sandal is thinner. You can hear the left slap harder. File that. They stop. Someone clears his throat. You swallow with him. Perfect timing? No. Practice timing. You learn to hitch every body complaint to someone else's noise because your body can't be trusted. That's Shinobi truth number 1. Your meat betrays you. You train it until it lies for you. Below, a screen squeals. Too fast. Forced. New hand on an old door. Someone anxious. The room temperature shifts a degree when a draft slides under the roof tiles. Rain is coming. Good for you. Bad for tiles. Slick clay turns roofs into arguments with gravity. You mark it as future cover and current risk. The math changes. It always does. There's an itch along your jaw. It's dust or lice or your brain screaming for novelty. You press your tongue to the roof of your mouth, hard to distract the urge. It works for 15 heartbeats. You ride those. Then you reset. Cycle senses. Smell, sound, light, touch, gut. Over and over until the pattern becomes background music. When the music changes, that's your cue. Quick win. A silent swallow isn't silent. It's timed. Pair it with a cough downstairs, a screen slide, a lantern pop. Mistake to avoid. Shifting weight because boredom says move. Boredom is a liar. It sells you comfort seconds before it sells you to the floor. You're not in a costume. You're a shadow stitched to wood, wearing the same sweat-stained hemp as the houseboys. And that's why the black pajamas myth never made sense. In real darkness, black cuts a perfect silhouette against paper and moon. Indigo and dirt brown eat the light. Disguise beats disappearance. You don't vanish. You get misfiled. That's survival. Forget the catalog ninja suit. The manuals and common sense agree. Black at night makes a crisp cutout against lantern glow and paper walls. The thing most people miss is how light works. In darkness, pure black is a hole. Against shoji screens and moonlit courtyards, that hole screams. Dark indigo, brown, smoke-stained gray. Those tones drink light and smear your edges. That's why work clothes win. Shoninki and Bansen Shukai lean on disguise over invisibility. Blend, don't vanish. Dress like labor. Porter, monk, charcoal seller, medicine peddler. Clothes as passport, not performance. If your hem, your weave, your knots match the district, you're filed as belongs here. If they don't, you're a question with feet. Questions get answers, usually the painful kind. Material reality matters. You're mostly in hemp, coarse, itch forward, washed in lye that kisses your skin like a mild chemical betrayal. Cotton becomes more common later, but the point stands. Your outfit smells like honest work. Sweat, ash, a dab of fish sauce if you need to lean market side. It's not theatrics, it's olfactory paperwork. Guards sniff out lies long before they read them. Let's talk color without the romance. Indigo wasn't ninja blue. It was a practical dye that hid stains and sat in the dark spectrum. Browns from bark, grays from smoke, sun-faded cloth that already looks like it sleeps under eaves. These are your palette. You match the neighborhood's laundry line, not a stage costume. The houseboys wear patch shorts. You patch. Monks in straw rain capes pass through. You get your hat low and your chant lower. Now props. The shortcut nobody teaches is that one correct object does more work than a dozen rehearsed lies. Ledger and charcoal nub for a clerk. Rope and 2 knots you can tie blind for a porter. Prayer beads and a humble bowl for a mendicant monk. You don't wave them. You let them sit in your hands the way they sit in the hands of people who don't think about them. Weight, callus, posture. Tools make the body tell the truth. Footwork sells the suit. A porter's hips swing with load memory. A monk's gait is small, deliberate, respectful at thresholds. A craftsman checks door frames with his eyes without meaning to. Measuring, always measuring. If you remember nothing else, remember this. Walk like you're late for a job that isn't espionage. You'll glide through gates meant to stop strangers, not workers who look busy. Black head wraps and masked faces? Occasionally, sure. When you're already inside and the job is dirty. Ash, soot, a hood to keep hair off wood. But face coverings outside? Suspicious. You use rain hats, face cloths in dust, sleeves against wind. Perfectly normal reasons. Anything that reads as trying not to be seen gets you seen. The game changer nobody talks about is seasonal correctness. Summer hemp hangs loose. Winter layers pad the sound and change your silhouette. Get that wrong and you'll pull eyes in a heartbeat. Sashes and ties matter. Knot styles shift by trade and region. Tie the wrong knot for your supposed station, and the first bored doorkeeper with a cousin in that trade will clock you. Same with sandals. Straw flip the air with a specific rhythm when wet. Wrap the soles with cloth for silence, but match the grime pattern so it doesn't scream new. You're aiming for studied mediocrity. Laundry tells on you, fresh pressed in a town of wrinkled backs? You look like coin. Filthy in a manor corridor? You look like a problem. You chase midline, used, clean enough, forgettable. Stitching does surveillance for you too. If local tailors favor a double line on sleeves, you learn to notice, and to fake it if needed. The reason this works is simple. Humans scan for anomalies, not identities. Remove anomalies, you remove questions. What about armor under clothes, the just-in-case fantasy? Weight and shape give you away. The Bansen Shukai pushes carry light. Ditch fast. Layered hemp can blunt a cut, but real protection is distance and denial. If you must wear something stiff, you balance it with padding that matches a porter's shoulders, not a samurai silhouette. Your safety net can't look like a net. Smell again, because it's that critical. Rice straw, lamp oil, horse, incense. Pick the right scent cloud. A monk who reeks of fish is a joke. A stable help without horse on him is an alarm. The trick I like. A scrap of cloth kept in a jar with the right smell for the roll. Dabbed on the collar. Cheap, effective, forgettable. Common mistakes? Dressing ninja in a district known for bright festival sashes. Wearing black on a moonless night and assuming you're invisible while the paper walls backlight you like a puppet show. Over-clean feet in a muddy town. Carrying a katana when your story says porter. The solution is painfully unsexy. Study the street, then match it. Once you nail that, everything else clicks. So you dress like a worker. That means your kit has to pass the same sniff test. Tools first, weapons last. Rope with honest fray, hooks that could hang buckets or you, a blade that cuts cord in silence. We'll get there. But the costume, it's not a costume. It's camouflage made of other people's expectations, and you wear it until they stop seeing you at all. Let's talk steel without the movie poster. The manuals make it boring on purpose. Your best weapon is a tool that explains itself if you're searched. A chisel with soot in its teeth. A short utility blade that can skin rope. Pry a latch, shave a hinge pin. If it looks like work, it lives on you. If it looks like a duel, it gets you killed. Shuriken? Not throwing stars as headshot fantasies. Think pocketable metal, spikes, plates, meant to distract, to cut a tendon if the world ends, or to pin cloth to wood so someone trips where you need them to. You throw at time, not arteries. A clink in the alley, a flash by the lantern, a guard's head turns, and you're now past the doorway he was meant to notice. The thing most people miss is sound. Tools are quiet by design. A cord saw wrapped in cloth whispers through lattice. A hinge pin teased up with a thin hook size, not screams. You carry saw cords, small chisels, awls, a coil of hemp rope with a grapple that could just as easily lift a bucket. Weight is rationed like food. Every ounce must earn its silence. Fire is the bully you hire from across the street. It's not a duel, it's a schedule. Oil on paper screens, a slow fuse braided from plant fiber and ash, an ember banked in a small clay jar so it travels. You don't light fireworks. You start a quiet argument between flame and air and leave before it gets loud. Smoke makes eyes water, men cough, patterns break. That's the win. Why not a katana? Because a katana is a status flag. It says samurai when your clothes say porter. It bangs door frames, reflects lantern light, and asks for attention at every checkpoint. Bansen Shukai leans hard toward entry and exit gear over battlefield kit. A short blade hides in a sleeve or belt and shuts up. A full-length sword explains nothing about why you belong here. Farm tools are your insurance. A sickle is a reaper's friend until it's a hook that pulls a latch string from the wrong side. A hammer is a carpenter's habit until it's a wedge to jam a door after you're through. You don't stroll with a weapon, you breathe with a purpose. When someone asks, you point to a roof, a fence, a cart. The tool answers. You don't. Overarming is the rookie sin. Too many blades, too many fantasies, and now you jingle. Weight drags your silence down. The Shoninki's subtext is ruthless. If a tool doesn't serve entry, exit, or information, it's vanity. Ditch it. The reason this works is simple. Every extra thing steals attention you should spend on breath, foot placement, and timing. Let's be clear about knives. Short, single-edged, with a spine you can thumb push. You use it to cut cord, to pair a shim, to split a reed for a copy of a seal impression. In a worst case, yes, you cut flesh. But the manuals and common sense agree. Stabbing makes problems. Blood is slippery, sticky, and loud in people's minds. You want incidents that look like accidents. Hooks and rope are honest friends. A soft-throated grapple wrapped in cloth kisses tile instead of clanking. A rope with knots you tied by habit never surprises your hands in the dark. You measure drops with your forearm, not guesses. The toolcraft is the fight. Once you stick, you climb. Once you land, you're gone. Violence is a tax you pay only if the math says there's no other currency. Powders live in tiny gourds and cloth packets. Not kill on contact, but make a guard rub his eyes and curse while you vanish. Ash and chili to blind. Fine sand to turn a polished corridor into a skating rink. Stink to push people away from where you need to be. Cummins' translations make this clear. A lot of poisons are really problem makers, not corpse makers. Caltrips are the punctuation mark at the end of no. You drop them in a choke point behind you, not in front of you like a cartoon. Wrapped in paper for sound discipline, the paper tears as they deploy. Someone runs, someone yelps, and your head start becomes a street's length. They're escape commas, not attack exclamation marks. And yes, sometimes it's ugly. A rigid spike hidden in a sleeve for a close wrist puncture if a grab becomes a death grip. A bamboo sliver in a locked tongue so it sticks at the right moment. A reed pin to lift a door bar without showing your hand over the threshold. The game changer nobody talks about is that the best fight is a door that doesn't open for the other guy. If you remember nothing else, remember the hierarchy. Information first, entry and exit second, misdirection third, pain only when cornered. Your kit mirrors that order. You carry the means to see, to copy, to move, to vanish. Weapons are the last resort and the least glamorous. The pros aren't armed to the teeth, they're geared to the job. That's why they come home. Now here's where most people mess up. They picture clean throat slits and noble last words. The manuals and the political reality push the opposite. Priority is destabilization, not hero kills. A dead lord creates chaos and revenge. A compromised storehouse creates doubt. Doubt is cheaper, safer, and it doesn't point back to you with a sword. The thing most people miss is that good assassination reads like bad luck. Shoninki warns against glory-seeking because spectacle drags you into the light. You want the gossip mill to do the autopsy. He drank too much. The ladder was rotten. Someone left oil too close to the screen. You manufacture incidents that fit existing human sloppiness. That's not cowardice. That's camouflage. So what does killing look like when it has to look like something else? Food is the obvious lever, but not the romantic poison goblet. You sour the rice jar so a retainer goes down sick, and the Lord spends 3 days paranoid about his kitchen. You salt the rumor that the fishmonger's barrels are off. Suddenly, everyone's appetite is your weapon. If someone important does die, it's from illness, not your hand. Forensics by gossip is the only kind that matters here. Fire plays the long game. Lamp oil nudged a thumb closer to a paper screen, a wick trimmed wrong, a slow-burning cord tucked where the night breeze will do the rest. A small blaze scatters guards. A large one erases ledgers, maps, and inconvenient witnesses. You don't stand to enjoy the view. You're already 3 alleys away, hat low, a humble nobody whose home almost caught, too. Engineered accidents are the bread and salt of this work. A shaved ladder rung that fails under a particular man's weight. A gate pin weakened so it snaps during a routine inspection. A roof tile loosened above a walkway where officials prefer to stand and complain. The reason this works is pattern. You've mapped who stands where and when. You break the habit, not the man, and let habit do the rest. Sometimes you nudge people into hurting each other. Stage a tavern brawl with the right hotheads, seed a whisper that someone insulted someone's sister, and now 2 factions bruise each other while you lift a letter off a belt or slip a bundle into the wrong hands. Indirect results, minimal fingerprints, maximum deniability. But let's be clear, it gets ugly. If lethal force is ordered and unavoidable, manuals tilt toward proximity with plausible tools. A short spike to the kidney in a bathhouse scuffle, a fall helped by a shoulder at a dim stairwell, a drunk man found in a water channel after a festival night. Violent, yes. Cinematic, no. You're not dueling. You're editing a timeline so a life ends where lives sometimes end anyway. Why so careful? Failure costs don't stop with you. Collective punishment is a policy, not a myth. Villages burned to answer questions no one could answer. Handlers cut ties fast to keep networks alive. Clients love plausible deniability because it keeps their hands clean even if yours are not. If your work looks like an assassination, it points up the chain. If it looks like life, it points nowhere. A micro story from a pattern, not a person. A steward in charge of granary keys starts showing up late and flushed. Not a target, an opportunity. You trade him a rumor for a bigger rumor, and a small packet ends up near his sleeve. Not poison, itch powder. He scratches, he's scolded, he drinks to save face, he forgets a latch. 2 nights later, rats enjoy a feast. Grain is accidentally spoiled, the garrison goes hungry, and a sortie never happens. No hero died. An army got smaller from inside. Common mistakes. Imagining a clean blade equals a clean exit. Blood invites questions. Bodies trigger audits. Even if you vanish, the aftermath spawns dragnet behavior, roadblocks, house searches, angry men who don't care who you are as long as you're convenient to punish. The pro's instinct is subtraction. Reduce visibility, reduce intention, reduce links. Shoninki's human focus matters here. You profile not for who to strike, but for who will carry your nudge, who is proud, who is careless, who owes money, who drinks, who prays too loudly and watches too little. You don't fight people, you steer them. You compose scenes where your absence is the loudest part. If you remember nothing else about assassination, remember this hierarchy. Destabilize logistics, corrupt timing, fracture trust. Then, only if required, remove a person. And if you must remove them, make the world do it for you. Drink, steps, flame, water, gravity. The earth has a full toolbox. Use it. Then let rumor write the report while you walk away looking like you never learned your letters. Now, we zoom out to the storm that made your skill set valuable. The Sengoku period is fractured power stacked on shifting alliances. No stable center. Banners bloom, wilt, then bloom under a new crest. In a world where loyalties turn on a cousin's marriage or a drought, information isn't nice to have. It's oxygen. Lords who breathed it lived longer. Fragmentation rewarded informants because armies moved like weather systems. Sudden, sideways, and petty. You couldn't trust yesterday's treaty to survive tomorrow's rumor. So you built ears. Shinobi thrived because they delivered certainty in a market of guesswork. Not prophecy, just the boring truth of gate times, grain counts, and which captain plays dice after curfew. In chaos, trivia becomes strategy. Castle building turns the dial further. The boom in fortifications creates hard shells that beg for soft underbellies. Sieges love inside knowledge. Where the water channel runs, which storehouse sits on old wood, which postern gate sticks in the rain. Thick walls are expensive. A servant's habit is cheap. You don't storm stone if you can seep through wood. That's where you come in. Logistics is the real battlefield. Granaries, fords, messengers, cheap to wreck, brutal to repair. A burned bridge steals a month. A spooked courier steals a battle. You aren't paid to be brave in daylight. You're paid to make daylight battles smaller later. Or not at all. Lords count rice like coin. You're the subtraction symbol they don't admit they hired. Power brokers trade intel like rice futures. Truth, half-truth, and bait move side by side. A letter confirming a levy, a rumor about a betrayal, a forged map that is just accurate enough to be lethal. Your network becomes a marketplace of whispers, and your job is quality control. The manuals matter because they teach method, how to test a rumor against the ground, how to read a man's face as if it were a ledger line. The thing most people miss is deniability as statecraft. Open war is public. Covert pressure is polite. A lord can't be seen bribing a rival steward, but he can hear that a river crossing floods at the third bell. He can hear that a garrison is light on salt. Information becomes a courtesy exchanged at arm's length. You're the arm. Shifting alliances make identification dangerous. Last week's ally is this week's enemy. Therefore, the best uniform is still anonymity. You move as porter, monk, peddler, because crests are death traps. If stopped, your story references local rhythms, not banners. I'm delivering herbs to the lower kitchens. That sentence stays true no matter whose flag flaps at the gate today. Peace creep changes the business model. As unification advances, castles stabilize, roads extend, patrols regularize. The freelance spy turns into internal security, palace watch, urban informant. Same skills, different paperwork. The job narrows from burning ladders to watching stewards. You adapt or you go back to charcoal, keeping the habits that kept your lungs working. Alliances weren't just between lords. Monastic complexes, merchant leagues, pirate bands, peasant leagues, everyone played. You learned to listen across social lanes. A monk's complaint can predict a levy. A merchant's shortage can predict a siege. A boatman's fee hike can predict a blockade. You don't need prophecy, you need pattern fluency. Politics turns into weather again, and you read clouds in ledgers and gossip. Messaging systems explode and complicate everything. Hand relays, runners, fire beacons, conch horns, fast but brittle. Intercept the right runner and you own an afternoon. Plant one false signal and you turn a troop movement into a night march to nowhere. The manual's emphasis on seal impressions and wax makes perfect sense here. A seal isn't a stamp, it's a gate key. Copy it clean and paper doors open. Why did lords pay for you when honor culture supposedly sneered at shadows? Because honor without rice is poetry without ink. The arithmetic bites. A dishonorable act that prevents a siege also prevents 10,000 dishonorable funerals. Everyone knew it. They just preferred not to say it out loud. That's why your name never shows up in songs. Common mistakes? Assuming a timeless ninja. Roles mutate with rulers. Techniques survive because physics doesn't change, but targets do. Early chaos loves arson and roots. Late consolidation loves surveillance and internal audits. If you're still training to burn ladders when the new lord wants you counting doors, you're obsolete. One last bit of political physics. Fear of betrayal disciplines everyone. If people think spies are everywhere, they behave. You don't have to infiltrate every manor. You only have to make the smart ones wonder. Rumor becomes policy enforcement. That's efficient governance, as ugly as it sounds. And it's why Shinobi persisted in the margins even when wars cooled. So yes, fractured power built your trade, castles sharpened it, logistics fed it, and deniability paid it. The Sengoku storm didn't create ninja magic. It created steady demand for patient trespassers with good ears and better exits. You were valuable precisely because no one wanted to admit they needed you. You stand under a hat wide enough to pretend you're anonymous and not quite wide enough to keep the sun from licking your neck. The basket digs a groove into your shoulder. It smells like dried mugwort, old rope, and the faint ghost of fish because you borrowed it from a stall that sells both hope and leftovers. Today, you sell herbs. You also sell the lie that you've always sold herbs. Heat builds under the brim. Sweat gathers at your temples and walks a slow line down your jaw. You don't wipe. Workers don't perform their discomfort. You shift the basket like it's a friend and let the market wash around you. Vendors barking prices like threats. Kids weaving through legs with errand momentum. Flies declaring sovereignty over anything that drips. Guard eyes skim you, which is the goal. Their gaze skips from crest to crest, then lands on your hat and slides off because you look like a boring problem their afternoon can't solve. Your relief is thin and brittle. You don't trust it. You maintain posture, slightly apologetic, the way small sellers do when every coin matters and every question might be a sale or a warning. Rhythm is your currency. You pay for gossip and small kindnesses, a pinch of mint for a cook with onion hands, a bargain on chrysanthemum for the old man who sweeps the alley, and knows which boots stand outside which door at lunch. Hot today, you say in the right dialect, the O tightened to match the valley over the ridge. He grunts the local agreement and tips his chin toward the back gate. Late. You file that. Gates don't get lazy alone. The rope ladder hides under greens, wrapped in straw. Weight disciplined, so the basket doesn't announce ambition. You've done the math. Arm numbness in exchange for plausibility. The ladder's bite will come later. For now, it's ballast calibrated to make you move like a person who carries things for a living. You trade steps for time, time for silence. A woman in lacquered sandals glances, then dismisses you. Perfect. A clerk in fastidious sleeves steals an extra look. Not perfect. You lower your eyes the way a seller does when faced with clean silk and potential scolding. He asks price. You answer with the neighborhood rate, not the city rate. He relaxes. That's dialect's cousin, number accent. Markets speak math with an accent too. Micro interactions are locks. You offer keys. Good day becomes working hard, becomes a muttered complaint about the taxman. You echo the complaint, one note lower. Now you're in his chord. He leans, he grumbles. He names a steward who loves card games more than ledgers. You don't smile. You look sympathetic the way poor people do when rich people confess. He leaves with mint. You keep a name. You slide a rumor to a fishmonger, soft, unsourced, gently salted, about a captain who favors red snapper on the third day after market. He gives you what you wanted, the delivery time and which boy carries it. Rumor for rumor. Better rumor acquired. The basket gets heavier with information, which is funny because the herbs keep getting lighter. You keep your hands honest. They touch plants like someone who believes in leaves. You don't look at the gate when the bell marks the hour you've been waiting for. You look at a beetle on your sleeve. The guard coughs on cue, or maybe because the air is thick. Either way, you notch it. The cough, the bell, the ripple of bodies. Patterns are the real clock. Under the herbs, the rope ladder's knots are positions in a prayer you've memorized. Overhand, clove, figure 8, all tied with fingers that never quite stop moving because monks count beads the same way. Your hands sell your story. Your feet match it. Small steps, heels soft, hips carrying the memory of too many trips between stalls. A boy runs past with a bucket, splashes your sandal, and doesn't apologize because boys don't when they're paid in urgency. The water drips through straw into dust. You follow the drops with your eyes like a bored seller watching rain patterns. Actually, you're watching boots. The pair you care about marches late again. That's 2 days. That's habit, not accident. You buy a bowl of soup you don't want. You hold it like warmth is a treat. You sip because sipping gives you an excuse to stand near the wall with the hairline crack that leads to the narrow behind space where the ladder will matter. The soup hides your mouth, and the steam gives you a reason for eyes that look damp, not calculating. The hat rides low, but your ears work. The guard mentions a flooded ford upriver. The fishmonger swears that the rice came thin this month. A porter curses a new padlock on the storehouse and mimics the way it sticks. You store each complaint where it belongs. River, grain, iron. A ledger grows in your head with no ink. It weighs nothing and everything. You leave with less herb and more story. The ladder hasn't moved all morning, but your exit path has. You earned it one rumor at a time, one kindness, one price spoken in the right shape. This is daylight stealth, not hiding, but being filed under harmless. Your sweat cools in a shadow, and for a second your body feels grateful. You don't reward it, you keep walking. Let's unpack the basket you pretend is full of herbs. It's actually 4 kits braided into one. Entry, exit, evidence, escape. Each piece explains itself if someone peeks, and none of it jingles like a conscience. Entry first. Doors, walls, and windows aren't obstacles. They're dialects. You carry small chisels with soot-stained mouths that look like a carpenter's habit. A cord saw wrapped in cloth whispers through lattice and soft pine, teeth oiled with lamp residue so they don't sing. Thin hooks, reed-thin, iron-tipped, lift hinge pins a breath at a time. If a bar blocks you, a wedge of bamboo slides under to buy the finger width you need. Grapples are not pirate props. They're soft-throated, wrapped in rags so tile hears a kiss, not a clank. Rope is hemp, measured by your forearm, 3 spans to a window, 5 to a wall, a coil that makes your shoulders move like a porter's, whether or not there's weight on it today. Door and wall literacy is the quiet superpower. You learn grain by touch. Cedar sighs, pine complains. Old paper breathes when you lean. You test with breath, not knocks. Exhale along an edge and listen for draft. Where air moves, tools move. Where air stops, you stop. The trick nobody glamorizes is patience. Shave, pause, listen, saw, pause, smell for heat, lift, pause. Let the house tell you if it noticed. Exit kit mirrors entry with a bias toward speed that still looks like nothing happened. Knots tied blind. Clove and figure 8 stacked in muscle memory. A short rope with a loop that finds a beam in the dark because your fingers already counted splinters last time. Pre-placed aids matter more than heroics. A peg pressed into a crack a week ago, a folded wedge hidden under a shrine mat, a dead drop with spare sandals wrapped in cloth so you can lose telltale mud, grapples that release without tantrums when you tug twice. If you must run, you run along prepared quiet, not luck. Evidence is where the job actually pays. You carry wax in a tiny gourd, body warmed inside a sleeve so it's ready to take a seal impression without cracking. Charcoal and a reed pen live in a role that looks like any clerk's kit. Boring, stained, plausible. You don't write novels. You jot rhythms, gate times, storehouse tallies, odd footpaths. For copying, you slide thin paper for rubbings under a tally board and rub soft until truth appears without lifting a ledger. Seal impressions get dusted with ash to fix detail, then tucked in oiled paper so damp doesn't turn your work into mush. Memory does the heavy lifting, but paper saves arguments with tired brains. You memorize by building shorthand. A crest becomes 2 teeth, 1 valley. A route becomes wet shoe, dry shoe, sandal squeak. Evidence also means not leaving your own. You wipe with rice straw, not cloth that sheds. You turn sandals around in soft ground to confuse trackers. You blow ash over a scuff and let a breeze clean up after you. The best copy is the one no one knows walked out. Escape is the toolbox that says no, politely and persistently. Caltrops sit wrapped in paper to stay silent until dropped. The paper tears at release, and now a foot finds a lesson. Powders wait in corner knots, ash and chili for eyes, fine sand for polished floors, stink that pushes noses away from where you need to be. Sandals get cloth wraps that turn your step from clap to hush. A spare sash lives at the bottom of the basket. Change the knot style, change the story. A hat flips, a sleeve reverses. Now you're a different shade of forgettable. Fire kit is its own quiet animal. You don't carry torches, you carry time. A small clay ember jar rides in ash so it breathes slow. Slow fuses braided from plant fiber, ash dusted to resist damp. Burn like patient snakes. Oil lives in a bladder that doesn't slosh because you packed it tight under herbs that smell innocent. You place, you time, you go. Fire's job is to argue with wood while you argue with distance. Packing rules keep you alive when fear wants you to hoard. Balance the load so your hips remember labor, not panic. Redundancy without duplicates. 2 ways to cut, 2 ways to climb, 1 way to light, 1 way to blind. Everything ditchable in layers. If a gate looms, you shed weight that tells the wrong story. If searched, your kit answers questions before you speak. I mend. I carry. I sell leaves. The walk-away mindset is the spine of the basket. Carry nothing you're afraid to lose. Hide nothing you're afraid to use. Common mistakes? Shiny new tools that shout recent purchase. Overpacking until silence buckles. Fuses braided pretty and burning fast. Wax too cold to take an impression. Grapples that brag. Fixes are boring. Soot your steel. Oil your rope. Warm your wax. Wrap your iron. And tie knots until your fingers get bored enough to be reliable. The kit isn't cool, it's competent. And competence is what gets you back to boring, which is the only victory that counts. Before we talk heroics, we talk lungs. Breath is your metronome. You build ladders, 2 light inhales, 1 slow exhale that rides the house's noises so your chest doesn't announce you. Exhale on a floor creak. Inhale when the guard coughs. Hold through the hinges sigh. The reason this works is rhythm. You hide in other people's sounds until your pulse believes silence is normal. Pulse control is manual. Thumb to wrist, count to 4 on an inhale, to 6 on the exhale. Repeat until your heartbeat stops shouting in your ears. Panic spikes, shrink the breath, keep the ratio. Your body wants to sprint. You teach it to loiter. That tiny victory buys you steady hands when the latch finally listens. Heat is a liar. Sweat advertises fear and lights the skin with a shine lantern's love. You manage it with layers that breathe. Hemp wicks, but only if there's room. Tight wraps trap heat. Loose wraps let it drift. You dust problem spots with rice powder, collarbone, lower back, so sweat doesn't pool and betray you with a drip on wood that speaks louder than words. The game changer no one loves to practice is stillness and heat. Move slow. Let the room forget you exist. Fast is failure. Heat punishes fidgeters. Cold is the quiet thief. Fingers numb, knots get clumsy, lips stiffen and betray your dialect. You train with cold water at dawn so your hands learn to work when your brain wants them to quit. Layer hemp, then a thin paper vest if you have one. Paper traps warm air better than pride. Keep wrists and neck covered. Warm blood passing through helps everything else. Your breath fog will give you a way outdoors. You angle your mouth into your sleeve so steam wears a different face. Hunger is math, not drama. You're not starving for romance, you're rationing clarity. Slow burn foods, rice balls with pickled plum, millet cakes, roasted chestnuts. Sit heavy and release steady. Sugary treats spike and crash, which is how you fumble a knot at the worst bell. You time eating to the quiet period before movement, never right before a climb. Blood belongs in your hands, not your stomach. Thirst tempts fools. You sip, you don't gulp. Water sloshing in a belly sounds louder in nerves than in air. Late night? Maybe don't drink at all if there's no latrine plan. Your bladder doesn't care about missions. Plan for it, or it plans for you. Noise discipline starts in your joints. Knees click in old buildings. You oil your diet and your habits. Fish and sesame help. Gentle flex before any step. You place feet outer edge first, then pad, heel last. Never full weight at once. Sandal thongs can squeak. You dust them with a whisper of ash. Cloth rustle is a tattletale. You de-thread stiff seams, break them in with repeated washes, and pack nothing that rattles against anything. Teeth betray you in the cold. You teach your jaw to rest with tongue to palate, a cushion that keeps clacks from happening when your nerves try to play castanets. You swallow on someone else's noise, cough, bell, wind knock. Because a swallow in an empty room sounds like guilt. Creek math is an art. Old timber talks in patterns. You test zones with toe taps the size of a heartbeat. Hear a protest? You shift weight to the beam lines you mapped when you studied the ceiling or feel for the harder grain near the wall. Rugs lie by quieting. Tatami hum with a different pitch. You learn the difference or you learn humiliation. Light is a sound you can't hear but everyone sees. Skin reflects. You ash your hands if you're near lantern planes. Your eyes adapt if you respect them. No direct looks at flame. Lids half shut so peripheral motion pops. You let night vision grow like moss slowly by starving it of spectacle. A sudden lantern swing? You look at feet and shadows, not faces and fire. Sleep debt is the tax man. You won't get a full night. You bank moments. Wall lean sits, 3 breaths deep, eyes at half-mast that let the world blur, but keep motion obvious. You practice micro-naps with a finger hooked on your sash. When it slips, you're up. Segmented sleep sounds civilized. In practice, it's trench warfare with your own skull. You don't chase dreams. You chase resets. Pain management is boring and vital. Needle sting in the foot? Wiggle each toe in sequence without moving the ankle. Calf cramp? Press heel to wall, flex slow, hold breath out. Your body screams for movement. You give it micro motion that doesn't talk to the room. Numb hands? Rub thumb across each fingertip, then the heel of the palm. slow circles that wake sensation without flapping sleeves. Smell betrays and saves. You manage your scent cloud to match the room. Oil near lamps, straw near stables, incense near shrines. You also keep a dab of sesame so your own nose has an anchor. Strong, unknown smells won't hijack your breath when you need it quiet. If the stench is brutal, latrines, tanneries, you oil your nostrils lightly. Mouth breathe low, through teeth, so air warms and quiets before it rattles the throat. Abort thresholds keep you alive. Noise threshold. If you make two sounds you didn't plan inside a minute, you leave. Light threshold. If a lantern passes twice where it shouldn't pass once, you leave. Pattern threshold. If a routine breaks in 3 steps, wrong laugh, wrong whistle, wrong door, you leave. Pride kills. Pros retreat and reschedule. If you remember nothing else here, breath runs the body, body runs the mission. Heat, cold, hunger, noise. They're not enemies. They're weather. You don't fight weather. You dress for it, time it, and move when it won't kill you. That's how you last more than a day. Now that your body's quiet, you still need mouths that say the right things when you aren't there. Peasant networks are the nervous system of your invisibility. Shrine keepers, ferrymen, charcoalers, midwives, ordinary people with extraordinary sightlines. They aren't agents with code names. They're neighbors whose routines touch everyone. Hospitality isn't just tea and a mat. It's plausible shelter. A shrine keeper can host you as a pilgrim who arrived at dusk, which explains why you're inside after curfew. A ferryman can wave you aboard as the last crossing, which explains why you're on the wrong bank at the wrong time. A charcoaler's hut is a gray-smelling hole nobody wants to search thoroughly, which explains why you're unbothered. Hospitality is covered with manners. Payment is not coin flashed in alleys. It's favors, grain, repairs, news ahead of the market. You fix a shutter before a storm. You carry a sack for an elder whose sons are fighting somewhere stupid. You bring salt when the road tax bites. Those gestures stack. When someone later asks, "Did you see a porter?" They answer truthfully, "He helps." That's not loyalty. It's inertia on your side. Cover stories ride social grease. A midwife can walk anywhere at any hour with a face that says, "Birth can't wait." If she nods you through a gate with a bundle for boiling water, guards lean aside out of reflex. A traveling herbalist buys entry to kitchens, where gossip breeds faster than flies. A peddler of needles collects whispers from sleeves. Each roll isn't you. It's a coat someone lets you borrow for a bell or two. Code phrases exist, but romance has lied about them. Most signals are banal: a votive left slightly crooked, a rope coiled clockwise instead of counter, a shrine ladle turned handle up, not down. Words are risky, objects don't panic. When you must speak, you ask for spring water in winter, or you request yesterday's ash like a fool. The answer is an extra bowl or a door left unlatched. It's choreography, not poetry. Information flows along chores. Ferrymen know who travels by weight and timing, not names. If the planks groaned early with mail runners twice this week, messengers are moving more than usual. If charcoal deliveries spike to one storehouse, someone's fire is eating paper late at night. If midwives carry more to the castle, a mistress is about to be useful, or a scandal is brewing. You collect patterns without ever hearing a secret. Risk diffusion is built in. No one knows your full plan because you don't either. You carry only the next step. The shrine keeper hears that the lower gate lamp flickers and that the road to the ford is muddy. That's enough to schedule your feet. If soldiers arrive later with good questions, he can answer honestly and ignorantly in the same breath. Compartmentalization isn't clever, it's compassionate. Rumors outrun horses. You plant them in soil that wants them. A clerk complains about salt rations. You sigh that even the shrine rice tastes thin. Now the kitchen girls repeat your sigh to the steward, who hates being compared to gods. He tightens rules, creating friction you can predict and exploit. Rumor is a lever. Push gently. Let pride do the heavy lifting. You verify through triangulation. One person's story is a wish. 2 is a coincidence. 3 from different trades becomes a map. Ferryman says late crossings. Gate cleaner gripes about mud at odd hours. Charcoal smoke on the wrong ridge. If all three hum the same note, you move. If they don't, you wait. Waiting is cheaper than funerals. Common mistakes look like kindness spent loud. You overuse a contact because it worked once. Suddenly, the ferryman has a new boat and new eyes on him. You start bringing flashy gifts, and jealous neighbors start asking where his fortune came from. You talk too long inside a temple, and pious ears file you under interesting. Interesting is death. Maintenance is the real craft. You visit when you don't need anything. You buy a rice cake you don't want. You listen to a toothache complaint like it's strategy, because it is. Pain changes behavior, and behavior changes schedules. You fix a fence because fences keep cattle out of gardens that grow rumors you'd rather not see. You leave before gratitude becomes gossip. When a node burns, you don't argue with flame. You retire routes. You let doors stay closed. You shift to second-string contacts you've kept warm with occasional errands and zero expectations. You never scold a shrine keeper for getting cautious. That scolding is what soldiers do. You are weather, you change quietly. One micro scene, bloodless but precise. You approach a ferry late. The boatman scratches his ear twice, slow. That's not a code. That's his tell when he's being watched. You pivot. You ask for a seat tomorrow for the herb basket. He grunts the price an octave too high. His second tell. You leave, circle upstream through reeds you learned last spring, and cross shin deep where a fallen tree thickens the current's noise. The ferryman rows a soldier across and forgets you existed. Perfect. If you remember nothing else here, networks are human weather. You don't own them. You read them. You water them lightly. You never plant your whole plan in one garden. Hospitality buys you a night. Cover buys you a face. Information buys you a way out. Use all three, gently, and you might live long enough to age into something even more powerful. Boring familiarity. You crouch where nobody lingers by choice. The air hits like a slap. Ammonia. Rot. Wet wood that's been dunked in every mistake a body can make. Your eyes water. Good. You can blame the stink for the glassy look if anyone glances in. The floor slicks under your sandals. Drip, pause, drip. You start timing patrols by echoes. Wide splash, bucket emptying. Thin trickle. Someone too hurried to hide guilt. The insects sing a single sour note, a chorus tuned to dampen decay. You fold into it. Your throat tightens on a cough that would betray you in a heartbeat. You oil your nostrils with a fingertip, sesame and smoke, then mouth-breathe low through teeth so air warms before it rattles. The burn behind your eyes settles into a manageable ache. You test the wall with your shoulder. Wet boards hum differently than dry ones. This panel swallow sound. Behind it, the gap you measured by fingertip yesterday waits like a promise you don't entirely trust. You sit into the smell because the smell is your guard dog. Nobody investigates thoroughly here. Pride keeps noses outside. A foot cramps. It begs for a shake. You give it micro motions. Toe flexes counted against the drip. 2 flexes, 1 drip. Breath rides the same rhythm. Your hands rest palms up so sweat doesn't print on wood. You picture the walk outside. 3 steps from post to post. Then the lazy cough the night guard uses to tell his lungs he's working. Someone enters. Sandal, hesitation, cloth rustle. The pause of a man weighing dignity against urgency. You turn your face, show a profile that reads miserable. He chooses a stall far from you. Relief wants to laugh. You let it die. When he leaves, your window opens, the cough, the bell, the slow water note. You slide the panel, slip into the dark seam, and become what you actually are, a patient roach with a map. The world gags. You pass. So before you get comfortable with your clever exits, you need to meet the other outcome, the one the manuals politely circle. Failure is not cinematic. It's administrative cruelty with an audience. Interrogation wasn't a room with a single dangling lantern. It was public. It was a porch, a gate square, a roadside tree. You were display first, information second. Slow pain does 2 jobs. It loosens tongues and tightens obedience for everyone watching. A steward doesn't need your secrets as much as he needs a town to see what chasing secrets costs. You aren't facing enlightened forensics. You're facing ritualized humiliation that squeezes names out of fear. Tied where flies find you. Questions layered like weather. Who sent you? Where you slept? Which door bent under your hand? Which ferryman failed to count? They don't need the truth clean. They need enough truth to justify what's coming. Forced confessions love names because names spread terror in straight lines. Collective punishment is the gravity here. If you talk, your contacts suffer. If you don't, your family becomes a lesson about duty that nobles recite with straight spines. That's why handlers cut ties fast, not betrayal, containment. The cleanest way to protect a village is to insist you never met them. The manual's obsession with compartmentalization reads colder once you picture a valley's roofs catching fire because one name slipped. Survival protocols were not hero oaths. They were boring layers designed to collapse cleanly. You carried false identities nested like boxes. If capture forced one open, the next revealed a life that could stand a few questions. A porter from upstream, a pilgrim with a shrine donation, a charcoal helper with convincing hands. You never carried the master seal, just a scrap of something that pointed sideways. If you must break, you break toward innocence that scorches no one but you. Contingencies get darker. Yes, suicide methods are a whispered edge in this world. Swallowing a capsule, cutting a vein, walking into a river weighted by a sash. It's discussed in some traditions with clinical quiet, but it isn't romance. It's an argument against becoming a knife in your patron's back after capture. And the texts aren't unanimous Templars of self-obliteration. They're cautious. They put escape first, misdirection second, self-harm as a bitter last ditch. No glory, only math. Shoninki's tone is pragmatic, bordering on bleak. Choose your exit before you choose your entry. If the cover collapses, step sideways into the next persona so smoothly that the interrogator gets bored before he gets cruel. If you're boxed, create noise far from names. Knock over a story that points at a harmless lie. An invented debt, a fake lover, an argument with a market official, anything that burns time while real connections drift out of reach. You practice capture drills the way you practice knots. What does your face do when slapped? It does nothing helpful. You learn to breathe through a hit so your next words aren't ragged and suspicious. You memorize a chain of lies that link without snagging. Where you came from, who you stayed with, why your basket smells like herbs that don't grow here. Each lie is a bead you've thumbed 100 times. Hesitation stains. Rehearsal cleans. If you do break, and people do, you hope you only carry decoys. A seal impression that looks real enough to get an enemy punished for losing it. A letter that names a minor steward rather than the handler that matters. A route that turns into a dead end for anyone who follows it exactly. Failure doesn't have to be pure loss if you seed it with sand that grinds the wrong gears. Records won't help your memory much because success erased itself and failure got paraded, then buried. The archive loves winners it can name and losers it can use. A shinobi's perfect night leaves no ink. A shinobi's last day leaves a rumor, maybe a note in a lord's ledger about increased patrols and decreased pickles. If you're looking for heroic clarity, this job won't give it to you. It gives you ghosts, and the ghosts are practical. Patrons will disavow you, not out of cartoon villainy, out of policy. A lord who admits to you admits to everything you touched. That invites war he can't afford. He'll pay your widow on the quiet if he's generous. He'll say, never met him in public, even if he paid you yesterday. You knew that when you took the rice. If you forgot, the square will remind you. Micro scene, short and sharp, a gate, midday. You in a porter's sash that still smells like the pole. A junior officer waves you aside. Your stomach caves because your wax packet, used clean the night before, left a thumb smudge on the inside of your sleeve. He notices your sleeve, not the smudge. He asks about tax grain. You answer like someone who hates counting. He yawns. Then an older officer arrives. His eyes don't yawn. He asks where your calluses came from. Your answer is too fast, too textbook. His hand lands on your basket. He smiles like a man who just found an afternoon. That's the pivot. Either your second identity lands so softly he gets bored, or your inventory. Common mistakes drag you to that gate. Pride in clever gear, overconfidence in a single contact, the seductive idea that you can talk your way out of any room. The fix is humility drilled into muscle. Leave 2 exits open, know the third, and accept that sometimes the best exit is earlier on the calendar. Aborting is a success metric, not a shame. Torture breaks bodies before it breaks secrets. Plan as if you'll break. That's not defeatism. That's compassion for everyone tied to you. You rig your chain so when it snaps, it doesn't whip back into faces you care about. You keep your secrets distributed and your routes disposable. You pick handlers who know how to disappear you administratively the instant you go missing physically. And here's the ugly grace note. Sometimes capture isn't a disaster because the spectacle it creates buys your network time to relocate. The square is loud, the hills are quiet. While everyone watches the lesson, the ferryman scratches his ear twice and doesn't take the evening crossing. The shrine ladle turns handle up. Doors close, paths shift. Your pain becomes a flare the smart ones read. That's not comfort, it's a function. Yeah. If you remember nothing else from this, remember the hierarchy of survival. Pre-plan exits, carry nested lies, protect the network ahead of yourself, and never confuse your patron's needs with your safety. Failure is always on the table. You live longer when you set the table yourself. This is where glamour taps out and professionals clock in. Waiting isn't dead space. It's the job. You don't endure it. You work it. Observation cycles run like a looped prayer you don't have to believe in to make it effective. 5 senses in order, always in the same order, so panic can't improvise. Smell first, oil, smoke, damp, human. Hear second, sandal, cough, hinge, water. Sight third, sway of a lantern, shadow drift, the tremor in a screen that says wind or hand. Touch fourth, grit on a beam, tension in a rope, the give in a floorboard. Gut last, what's off? The loop keeps you busy without moving a muscle. It also builds a baseline, so off has teeth. Micro motions are circulation without confession. You never go still, you go invisible. Calf clenches on a count, toes flex one at a time. Fingers roll a silent bead that's actually your own knuckle. You rotate pressure points, left foot, left hip, right hip. So numbness spreads like a polite guest and not a coup. Your face rests in a way you've practiced. Jaw loose, tongue up to palate, eyes soft so tears don't pool and betray you with a blink at the worst second. Blood flow without rustle. That's the art. Timekeeping without a watch is civilized treachery. Bells are honest, but kitchens are better. Kitchen smoke thins at prep and thickens at boil. A courtyard's dog complains before the rice arrives. Monk chants tilt slightly off the hour in one monastery and dead on in another. You mapped both last month. A water clock you never see speaks by drip rhythm against stone in the North Hall. Fires settle with a sigh exactly 4 breaths after a log shift. That sigh becomes your quarter hour. Night doesn't need your guess, it needs your ear. You build cognitive scaffolds to keep sanity in place. Mantras are dumb on purpose. Smell, hear, see, feel, gut. Repeat. Bead counts ride the breath. 20 on the inhale ladder, 30 on the exhale. Then a silent recitation of a market list that is actually your route map disguised as groceries. You park memories in rooms, palace of memory, sure, but also cupboard of memory, corner of the yard of memory, so retrieval doesn't yank your face around with the effort. The trick most people miss is that thinking loudly shows up on your skin. You think quietly by giving your brain a toy. Waiting also includes not waiting. Knowing when to abort is part of the script, not a failure. You set thresholds before you start because fear negotiates badly. Noise threshold, 2 unplanned sounds in a minute, and you fade. Light threshold, a lantern that shouldn't travel passes twice, and you melt. Pattern threshold, 3 small deviations, wrong laugh, wrong boot scrape, wrong kitchen clatter, and you're a rumor somewhere else. If you argue with your thresholds in the moment, you've already lost the argument. You pre-compute exits like a miser counts coin. 2 exits open, always know the third. That's not a slogan, it's geometry. First is the way you came. Viable only if the house hasn't learned you yet. Second is a lateral off-ramp, beam to beam, screen to screen, roof line to roof line, that you rehearsed with your eyes the last time you were bored. Third is the vertical insult, down through a storage space, up to a crawl, out through a service gap, mapped by touch before you needed it. You memorize the sound each choice makes in your body. Rope hum, tatami whisper, tile slide. You'll pick by feel when hearing your own thoughts is too loud. The thing most people miss is that waiting is an active camouflage. People scan for motion and meaning. You remove both. You pick a posture that belongs. On a beam, you are forgotten wood. In a shrub, you're wind-shivered leaf. In a corner, you're a badly stored broom. That's not poetry. That's posture math. Lines and shadows that make your outline a bad story. You rehearse those shapes until your joints remember them better than your brain. Common mistakes in the long quiet? Fidgeting to prove you're alive. Counting time in seconds until seconds become knives. Fantasizing about the end so hard that you miss the beginning. The fix is petty discipline. Scratch only on exhale. Reset the observation loop when your mind starts writing scenes where you're the action hero. Return to the dumb mantra. Chew a single grain of rice into paste if you must give your mouth a job. Anything beats inventing a noise. Your ears can lie to you. Houses echo. Wind forges footsteps where there are none. You calibrate by cross-referencing. A footstep without a lantern shadow is a rat or a liar. A cough without a chest shift is sound sneaking under a door. You map how each hallway warps sound, and you don't trust a single sense to drive the carriage. That humility keeps you from bolting into a courtyard because a floorboard elsewhere spoke too loudly to your nerves. You also run boredom drills, not in a dojo. In life, you sit at the edge of a market and count only red sleeves for an hour. You stand by a river and time only the third wave after a boat passes. You listen for the one dog that barks offbeat on a street where every other dog agrees on when to complain. You're training the muscle that doesn't flinch at tedium. When the night stretches like bad noodles, you don't snap. Waiting is logistics. Your bladder has a vote. Your stomach whispers schedule. Your muscles invoice you for every heroic pause you tried last week. So you preload, salt just enough to hold water, not enough to beg a drink. Eat early, not much. Loosen the sash one notch before stillness, so circulation doesn't turn your legs into rumors. You're not strong because you can suffer. You're strong because you prevent suffering from making decisions. And waiting is ethics in its own bleak way. Silence protects people. If you rush because you're bored, you drag others into noise they didn't choose. If you hold because the threshold says hold, you become the kind of colleague peasant networks trust. That trust buys you doors that open when you actually need them. Patience isn't a mood, it's credit. Micro story, clean and anonymous. A man in a ceiling counted breaths for 3 hours past the planned mark because the kitchen rhythm hiccuped. He didn't force his legend. He left at dawn, covered in dust and regret. A week later, the same kitchen added a new steward who loved lanterns too much. If he'd moved on time, he'd have met that steward in the dark. The thing that saved him wasn't courage. It was dull obedience to his own thresholds. If you remember nothing else here, remember this. Waiting is not the absence of action. It is action distributed across senses, breath, posture, and time. You work the loop, you feed the brain quiet toys, you honor your thresholds, and you keep 3 exits in your pocket. That's the trade. That's how a shinobi doesn't become a story. They become a rumor that never quite had a face. The roof turns slick the moment the sky decides to spit. Tiles go from grip to glass. Your palms learn it first. Flat, careful, testing each curve like a tongue on a chipped tooth. Rain is cover, yes. It's also a trap that teaches overconfidence how gravity works. Water has a rhythm. Tonight it drums fast, then hesitates, then pours like a bucket tipped by a bored god. You move on the hesitation, not when it's loudest. That's when human ears wake up and try to separate storm from footsteps. You pick the in-between, where the roof mutters rather than shouts. Your hands spread like paddles. Your weight lives in your thighs, not your heels. Ankles whisper correction. You're a crawling apology to the weather. Cold slides into your sleeves because cloth is a liar. It promises to keep you warm and then funnels rivers straight to your elbows. You don't shiver. You turn the tremor into a micro-shake that lets your fingers find edge, tile lip, the rough seam where mortar failed years ago. Every flaw becomes a rung. Every rung is a thank you you don't say out loud. The rope waits where you staged it, a coil tucked under a tile you loosened with love, not force. You test the anchor with the same patient distrust you reserve for compliments. It holds. You feel the bite as hemp takes your weight, a friction burn you prepaid with callous and stubborn skin. The taste in your mouth is wet hemp and old smoke because your hand brushed the ember jar earlier and some nights never stop talking. Below, the yard is a conversation of dark and darker. Puddles catch whatever light the storm allows and throw it back as lies. You map without seeing, 2 steps to the beam, 3 to the gutter, then the drop. The guard coughs, but tonight the cough belongs to thunder. It rumbles through him before it escapes his mouth. Good. His body won't label your noise, because the sky already stole ownership. Your forearms shake on the descent, not panic. Effort. Wet rope steals grip and gives it back in a way that would be poetic if poetry didn't kill people. You feed slack like thread through a needle, 1 breath per hand shift. Your shoulders hold. Your calves start their quiet burn. You accept the burn as rent paid to gravity for temporary use of space. Halfway down, a tile complains. A slip the size of a thought. Your chest wants to gasp. You press tongue to palate, lock the breath behind your teeth, and let the rain speak for you. The tile settles. Your heart doesn't. It hammers once, twice, then remembers the ratio you taught it, 4 in, 6 out. Even if the numbers tonight are uncountable. Mud waits, and you enter it the way you enter a room you can't control. Soft, low, with your knees ready to apologize. The landing absorbs into muck instead of advertising itself on hard stone. Your sandals vanish up to the strap. Your toes feel cold creep over nails. You don't yank free. You rock the foot, heel toe, slow, until suction sighs and lets you go. People betray themselves to mud by hating it. You treat it like a clerk you need to bribe. Rain hides scent. It also makes every cloth a bell if you let it slap. You gather your sleeves with quiet fingers, fold wet weight against your arms, and become smaller. A gutter overflows near your ear like laughter you can't stand. You wait for it to crest, then move under its noise. The yard is a poem of drip and slap and hollow splash in a bucket you marked earlier in your head as too loud to pass. You don't pass it. You arc wide, thighs complaining about low steps that keep your silhouette below the screen line. A lantern flares behind the paper. Wind fed, then gutters. Shadows swing like accusations. You flatten into the geometry you rehearsed. Broom shaped by the wall, chin tucked, hat brim angled to break your outline into bad math. The guard's silhouette pauses at the frame. Thunder translates his cough into background. He scratches his neck, bored by weather, and turns. Weather gets credit for your existence tonight. You pay the bill by not asking for applause. The rope above needs retrieval, but not now. You tied it with a release that answers to 2 tugs and a prayer. You give it 1 tug and leave. Heroism is a tile clatter waiting to happen. You'll lose the rope. Fine. You have more hemp than spare lives. The gate is a rumor beyond the shed. You take the seam between building and fence, an alley for cats and ideas, and step where the fence posts root into sludge. Wood forgives sound better than stone. On the 3rd post, you feel the give you planted last week, a loosened stake, an exit that only opens for people who count days the way you do. You press, you slide, you slip through a gap that smells like wet earth and rat decisions. Outside, the road is a smear. Wheel ruts have become creeks. Your sandals argue with pebbles you can't see. You make your feet stupid, flat, soft, uncurious, so the road can't pick a fight. The hat becomes more than theater. It becomes a roof for a face that can't afford to look like relief. You don't look back. You don't look like someone who has a back to look from. You look like a porter who regrets the weather. Thunder gives you one more gift, a crack that rolls long enough to cover the sound of a latch settling behind you. Or maybe that sound only existed in your head. Either way, your shoulders let down a fraction, not a sigh. A rebudgeting of muscles. You taste water, hemp, and the iron coin of adrenaline your tongue keeps counting as if it's money. You pass a ditch that wasn't there yesterday because rain writes new maps. You adjust without drama. A dog barks once, then remembers it hates storms more than strangers. A shrine bell ticks where wind toys with rope. You touch the cord tucked under your sash like it's a talisman, which it is, and keep walking until the rain becomes less like a drum and more like a tired applause. Relief wants a speech. You deny it. Your body is still a ledger, and the night hasn't balanced. You survive because you didn't perform. You didn't duel the weather or dare the tiles to prove a point. You let noise be noise, mud be mud, and fear be a small animal you kept in your sleeve. You played ghost, not hero. That's why you're still breathing. That's why you might make it to morning with a face no one remembers. If one thing sticks, let it be this. Real Shinobi survived by being boring on purpose. Disguise, patience, and clean exits beat heroics every time. If this cracked the ninja myth for you, subscribe for more sleepless misery and tell me where you're listening from and what time it is. Want the next hit of reality? Check out my other video on why samurai honor was his lie.